Hey guys, Jim here. Welcome in once again, and in front of me is some familiar packaging. Bestech knives. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Bestech Slyther BG51C. And I got to tell you, this is a slick looking little knife. When I first saw this advertised or promoted, or however you want to say it, sneak peeked on Instagram, I was like, man, that is a really sharp looking design. All the way around, it looks gorgeous. What I didn't expect was the crazy low price. You're looking well under $100. And I think when you're looking at sub $100 retail knives, your bar is set pretty low. So it doesn't take a lot to really wow you. You're like, oh, wow, it has an edge. Wow, it opens and closes freely. Wow, the pocket clip isn't a disgrace. The bar is not set very high. But even if you did have a high bar set, let's say that you were going to compare this to a $250 to $300 knife, I think you would still be impressed overall with how this knife feels, how it performs, and the gorgeous lines in which it was designed around. There is definitely a lot to like about this knife, so let's go ahead and start getting into it. Let's get into the TLDW, Too Long Didn't Watch. This is the section for those that do not want to sit through an entire review listening to an actual review. They just want to hear the high points and the low points. No stories, no opinions, no nothing. So here we go. Start things off with the pros. For me, some of the pros are the fact that this is really lightweight. It's still got some substance to it, but it's not overbearing. It's going to be pretty easy for most people to carry, even though it has the look and the in-hand feel of a larger knife. It's actually pretty darn easy to carry. Another thing that I like is the blade profile. They're calling it a reverse tanto. Absolutely. I think it's real sleek, really good looking, and a good, useful blade profile for EDC style tasks. Another thing I like is the action. It's a snappy, very smooth, very fast action. They did a great job on the detent. They did a great job on the fitment of all the components. Everything works very, very well together. There is your lockup, by the way. Good, solid lockup. Not too early. And there is your blade alignment, nice and centered. Pretty chunky blade, by the way. I would have never thought this, but from looking just at the pictures of it, but it's got a pretty beefy, chunky blade to it. Another pro, let's see. I really like the black and the red G10. I love how they've done this. And through this bevel here, they've exposed the red. I think it looks really good, really sharp. And that's pretty much it. Now for the cons. The only real con that I can think of on this is the criminal pocket clip. You guys know I am not a fan. I've said this for basically a decade on this channel that no price point justifies a bent spring clip. It's the laziest possible way to make a pocket clip, and the whole deep carry pocket clip thing is ridiculous. It's never made any sense. All a deep carry pocket clip does is make it harder to extract the knife from your pocket. There is no benefit to a deep carry pocket clip except if you have a whole bunch of knife hanging out of your pocket and you're a klutz and you constantly walk into walls and stuff like that, you don't want to bang up your knife, there's a benefit there because the whole knife is down inside the pocket. But there is no stealthiness to it, which is the excuse most people use. Well, I work in an office environment and I don't want people to see that I'm carrying a knife. Then you're working around a bunch of absolute fucking morons. Because if they see this huge clip on the side of your pocket and they don't think it's a knife, they're idiots. You're not fooling anybody. I'm so tired of hearing that from people in the comments section when I give shit about these deep carry pocket clips. All you're doing is making it hard on yourself because you don't have any knife to grab with any part of your hand. You're having to reach in and you're having the only thing on the outside that you can grab, you're not grabbing a knife, you're grabbing the clip. So you're putting pressure on the clip against the body of the knife with your pocket material in between. So you're making it harder to take it out. It's dumb and it makes no sense. Now, I don't fault Bestech for this because they're simply listening to their customer base. And the unfortunate thing is they're not able to filter out the opinions between people that actually know what they're talking about and people that are talking out of their asses, which, hey, this is the internet. We've all seen it in every possible way. In every possible group setting, people are talking out of their asses with an anonymous name attached to it. At least when I talk out of my ass, my real name is right next to what I said. So, yeah, so there's that. So I don't blame Bestech for the decision to do the deep carry pocket clip because it is what people talk about. People do say they want it. I've never once actually heard somebody say, yeah, I only bought that knife because it had a deep carry pocket clip. I've heard people say, well, I didn't buy a knife because it didn't have a deep carry pocket clip. So manufacturers don't need to focus so heavily on doing that to satisfy the customer that's probably not going to buy your knife just because you did that. If you have enough good features on a knife, people overlook the deep carry pocket clip if that's something that they want. And they're like, man, but everything else is so great. It's got this and it's got this and it's got that. I wish it had a deeper carry pocket clip, but I can live without that because of all of these other overwhelmingly positive options. I guess that's kind of a con. The area that my finger wants to go to on this flipper tab is right here, and there's no jimping there. You've seen my finger slip off of this flipper tab twice already, and they really could have used the jimping. Just one more line, one more machine line right up there would have been great. And that's a me thing. Everybody else may pick up this knife and come at it straight on. But there's something about the shape of this handle and the position of this flipper tab and the angle of it that my finger wants to go more toward the top than the front. And I'm not really certain why. I can't ever recall having a knife in my hand that I really did that with. So yeah, one extra little line of jimping up there would be great. But that's really it. I mean, for me to not really have a lot of nitpicks about something, I think that there's something to be said for that. They've done a really overall good job. A good balance between design, functionality, feature set, all of these things. And at that price point, it's crazy. I've seen them as low as $68, as high as $80. That's nutty. So now let's get into specs, shall we? Let's get that bad boy open, lay it out right over here, and get into those specs. Overall length, 8¼ inches. So it's still a compact knife, but it's on the fuller size of compact. Blade length, 3.625 inches. Really, really good blade size. It's large enough to be utilitarian and to be useful, and it's small enough to maintain a compact carry and also not be too tremendously heavy. As I mentioned before about the blade stock thickness, this is 150 thou thick. I look at this knife and think, as sleek and slender as it appears to be, that when I looked at it, I thought, oh, that's got to be a pretty slim blade stock. So I'm thinking between 130, 140 thou. This is 150, which normally is not, tremendously thick, but it has a nice substantial feel to it in this layout. Blade grinds, they are flat ground. You've got this really cool kind of titanium gray finish to the blade. So I'm not entirely certain what the finish is. It's not a Cerakote. It's more like a DLC, but it's not mimicking the finish underneath it. A true DLC, if you have a hand satin blade, you'll see the satin striations through a DLC. If it's mirror polished, you'll see the mirror polish through the DLC. So I don't know that I would call it a DLC. It's what the industry tends to call DLC. But it's definitely, I can't say it's definitely not a Cerakote, but it doesn't feel like a Cerakote finish. It's really, really nice. I don't know if it adds any major benefit. I don't know if it's a highly corrosion resistant material honestly, any coating over a steel blade is going to make it more corrosion resistant. But yeah, I dig it. I think it looks really good. It's a cool color, and it's a nice contrast to the black. What else do we need to talk about here? The liners, for those that don't know, are steel, and they have punched out many, many holes to reduce the weight of these steel liners. If these liners were titanium, this would be significantly lighter in weight. But as it stands, it's 4.55 ounces, which is not overly heavy for an EDC knife for almost anybody. Handle thickness over 1/2 inch. And the blade steel is, does it say it right here? I'm pretty sure it does. Let me zoom in to see. 14C28N Sandvik steel. Not the most exotic steel in the world, but again, this is meant to be a budgetary knife. A lot of people will swear by 14C that it is a good performing steel. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I have not put 14C through any kind of rigorous testing to be able to tell you from firsthand experience whether it is a better steel than something else you want to compare it to, or if it falls short of something else. I can't do that because I have not personally tested it for any kind of performance grading. It seems fine. It seems to hold an edge for an okay amount of time for an occasional use knife. And that's across the few years that I've had a handful of knives in that steel that I've played with. Certainly not, I didn't abuse them. I didn't hard use them. They were not EDC everyday carry knives because I have a large collection that I rotate through. So I can't really say, I used that thing for 3 months and I cut a whole bunch of stuff and then I never had to strop it, never had to resharpen it. I did not do that kind of testing, so I'm not going to just blurt out BS because I just don't know. But I have heard from several people that they, when shopping in a budget range, that it's one of the steels that they prefer. So there's something to be said for that. I believe watching Neve's Knives, I think Jared has actually had some positive things to say about 14C28N. I'm not saying that he was like, oh my God, it's the greatest thing in the world, but that he had some positive remarks about the steel. So I would have to assume that it takes a pretty good edge, that it holds a pretty good edge, and that it's fairly corrosion resistant for him to give it any sort of accolades. All right, and that's the specs out of the way. Now, my further personal thoughts on this knife. It's a little blocky. I wish there was a little bit more contouring, even though it is lightly contoured. It is a little bit thick and a little bit blocky in the hand for the size of knife that it is, but they really did a good job making the ergos work. The finger choil here leading up into the flipper tab for the finger guard fits comfortably, fairly neutral ergonomics. This looks like a straight-bodied, rectangular-shaped handle, yet it's not. It's got a little bit of curvature right here where it drops down and allows it to be a little bit more form-fitting to the hand. I really like their stylistic choices of that gray titanium finish kind of blade coating matched up to the pivot. Pivot's really nice as well. Matched up to the pocket clip. Your back spacer here is unique. You've got a G10 back spacer that is notched away heavily for that hidden lanyard post so that you can run a lanyard through here if you'd like to. They did do some lightening by cutting some speed holes into the steel liners. That shows that they were paying attention, that they know that people are going to want this to be as light as possible given the materials it's made from. Here's the other thing too. I don't know if a lot of companies just don't put the faith in G10 that they really could. G10, while it may have some flex, G10 at this thickness would be strong enough to make this frame from. Then you would have to work probably a sub-frame lock, an inset tab lock into it where your steel lock is screwed into a slotted area inside. So they could have reduced a lot of weight by not using the steel liners. They could have just had the G10 frame and had a inset tab lock in steel or titanium. And I think it would have performed just fine. But yeah, there is something about if somebody picks up a knife and they give it a good little squeezy squeeze, if they feel a little bit of flex, they're going to go, oh man, that feels cheap. And that could have been the deciding factor for them to go, hey, let's forego the super crazy lightweightness and add a bit of structural rigidity, whether it's true rigidity or presumptive, if it's just going to be in somebody's head. They did a great job. I mean, having the black over red G10 would have looked great on its own from this angle, but by beveling away here and up here, where they beveled all the way through the black to expose the red, looks really good. I think that is a very handsome design choice. Something I wish I would have thought of. I think that is really clean and really cool looking. The machining all the way around on this knife is done very, very well. They also finished the G10 very well. There's no dry whiteness to it. Especially in the dark G10s like black. When you're done sanding it, unless you buff it, and even if you buff it sometimes, you'll have like a white chalky haze. That's kind of a pain in the ass to get rid of. And they did a really good job on finishing everything all the way around. This is a much, much lower grit than the outer perimeter. So to get this looking good, only a small challenge. To get the rougher, the not as refined sanded areas of G10 to look that good, that is a bit more of a challenge. They did a great job. I think it looks fantastic and it feels nice in the hand. It's got a little bit of texture to it. Doesn't really make it any grippier, but you do have a texture to it, and it does feel very, very nice. I think overall it is every bit as nice as the pictures led me to believe it was, because as soon as I saw them post it on Instagram, I'm like, wow, that thing is fire. That looks fantastic. And no, I don't talk like a 16-year-old street kid. I don't say things are fire. I just meant on the Instagram post, I used the emoji for fire. I was like, man, that thing looks really, really great. And I was really surprised to see in person that it's every bit as nice as I had wanted it to be. Could it be a little bit lighter? Yes. Could it, I'm just going to leave it at that. I think it's the only thing any normal person would take away from this and go, I wish I could change that. I wish it could be a little bit lighter, but it's not like it's ridiculously heavy. I mean, 4.5 ounces, that's really nothing, especially in this size, 8¼ inches overall. So there you have it, guys. That's my thoughts very quickly on the Bestech Knives Slyther. Bestech has consistently raised the bar over and over and over for the quality of knives that they are manufacturing, both for their own brand as well as for collaborations and OEM work for other brands manufacturing knives for them. They just keep getting better and better and better. So it's no surprise that they're one of the most talked about knife brands on YouTube. That's it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you on the next video.